people to vote on faith rather than on what actually works.
We have so many challenges that we're facing right now in Portland that we can't afford to make piecemeal changes, right?
Expensive, monumental, and now divisive. The effort to persuade voters to dramatically overhaul Portland's government in November is turning into the most expensive effort in the city's recent history. Good evening. Thanks for joining us for K2 News at 6. I'm Deborah Nance.
And I'm Steve Dunn. K2 investigator Red Gasaway is looking into who's funding campaigns for and against the changes. He joins us now, right? This campaign is also creating a divide on city council, right?
Steve, it is a divide not just on the merits of the proposal, but on whether city council members should even stay out of the process altogether. How the business is done in this room at City Hall and who runs the city is all on the ballot this November. This summer, a council-appointed 20-person charter commission overwhelmingly approved a proposal to shake things up. It features 3 dramatic changes: get rid of Portland's commission form of government and replace it with a council that only passes policy and an executive office headed by a mayor that runs the city. Move from a citywide council to a district-based council. The city would have 4 districts, each with 3 representatives. Lastly, use ranked choice voting to elect leaders, ranking candidates in order of preference. Damon Motz-Storey is part of a group campaigning for the changes. This is a bit of a wonky proposal. It can be a little bit in the weeds for the average person. How are you really going to break through that and convince people this is a change worth voting for?
Yes, I think it's about just letting folks know that this is about giving more voice and more choice to the voters. It's about better representation for everyone, and it's about a more effective and responsive city government.
The Political Action Committee, or PAC, encouraging voters to support the proposal is called Portland United for Change. The group reported $170,000 in cash donations to the state. That includes $50,000 from Oregon ranked choice voting advocates and $25,000 each from Building Power for Communities of Color and Fair Vote Action. Motz-Storey says they'll need every dollar.
It's all about voter information and education efforts. We're going to be getting out and meeting voters where they're at, whether that's online, whether that's knocking doors, right? We have a big volunteer canvassing team that's gearing up to get information out to folks about what they'll be voting on this fall.
The proposal features endorsements from labor groups, civic groups, and others who say they've been left out of city government.
Vote no to get to a better yes.
It also faces organized opposition. This group kicked off their campaign for a no vote last week. The PAC is called Partnership for Common Sense Government. They've reported just under $13,000 in donations. Organizers say they raised just over $10,000 more at this event. Former candidate for city council, Damon Motz-Storey, is part of that effort.
This new charter measure, this untested, unproven charter measure, will keep us going in the wrong direction. So let's do something practical. As we say, let's do something that works in common sense, that people know works, that has been tried somewhere else, and will make Portland a better place to live.
Motz-Storey prefers more districts represented by only one person. The group's kickoff event featured former elected officials and others who have worked in and around City Hall. Motz-Storey says the group's goal is simple.
Our goal here is to get that information out, defeat this measure, and then Commissioner Mingus Mapps will propose something that'll be better down the road.
Mapps' reported involvement led to a condemnation from his colleague, Commissioner Joanne Hardesty. In a statement, she said in part, quote, "We are witnessing the undermining of 2 years of exhaustive volunteer work by a diverse committee that was unanimously appointed by all of council." She went on to say they, the Charter Commission, now deserve an opportunity to make their case to the public without city council members tipping the scale. Commissioner Mingus Mapps says he doesn't think he's putting his thumb on the scale. However, he confirms he'll share an alternative reform measure before November to put before city council next year if this vote fails. Your colleague has a problem with that. She feels like commissioners shouldn't be doing that before the vote. How would you respond to that?
Well, again, I don't think that that's how democracy works. I think democracy is about engaging in debates about the important issues that we face as a community, offering our best ideas, engaging in that dialogue. That dialogue is how ideas get better. I'm deeply committed to that process. I am going to engage in this process. I think sitting on the sidelines and not sharing your best thinking does not serve the people of Portland well.
The Multnomah County Sheriff's Department, Transit Department, and TriMet and the Portland Police all team up on this, and they've been doing this for a while, since the first part of the year, since January. I've done a couple of these missions every month. The latest at Northeast 122nd and Burnside, in part because there were 2 shootings in that area last month. Now, the sergeant in charge of the mission says it really starts before patrols even go into the area. He goes out and talks to community stakeholders and local business owners to hear from them what they're seeing and what the problems they think are there from their point of view, and then takes that and decides, yeah, this is a place we need to go. So that's why last Thursday, about 20 officers and deputies were making patrols. They had feet on the ground, boots on the ground. They were talking to people. They were asking questions, looking into things, seeing what was happening there. They ended up making some arrests, but they also did a lot of outreach as well, helping people that could use some help that were not committing those crimes.
Joe, you talked to a number of people in the area today. You watched what was going on as well. What did they have to say, and what did you see?
Well, let me start with the second part of that, because we saw quite a bit of commotion out there, something that looked legitimately to us like a drug deal going down, some products being exchanged for under-the-waist handshake that you think would be that stereotypical drug deal. We saw people, maybe they were mentally disadvantaged or having an issue there, or they were on drugs. They were just wandering through traffic and through the intersections. A lot of close calls there. Speeding traffic. We saw drivers cutting in front of the MAX train. So things like that. So those things can be considered crime as well. One thing, though, we heard from people is that they were not wanting to even bring their kids to the area or let them get off the train, and some said they were afraid themselves to get off the train going through that area. But one thing everybody shared with us is they think that, mental illness is the biggest concern at the core of the problem, along with that drug addiction. That needs to be treated in order to stop the crime.
Kids are back to school, and doctors say your child's best bet to a healthy school year starts with their annual checkup. Family physicians track growth and developmental milestones at each age. They also screen your child for any mental health concerns like anxiety and depression. Doctors also go over serious topics that maybe aren't part of the conversation at home, like drugs and alcohol, for example.
It's a good time for, especially if parents aren't comfortable having those conversations. Of course, we encourage open communication between parents and children and teens, but the doctor's another outside person that can give your kid advice about those things as they're coming up with new peer interactions.
Doctors typically ask about daily routines as well. If there are any habits that they think need some change, those will be addressed, like bedtimes and diet.
Every parent's it's almost like a new year, like a new time to make like New Year's resolutions kind of. It's a new beginning. So thinking about the kind of habits that you want for your family.
With growing kids, there are several vaccinations doctors recommend each year depending on age. This chart is from the CDC. It's for people 7 to 18 years old. There's a lot to keep track of. If your child is overdue, this is a good opportunity to get it all done in one appointment.